My great grandfather was Colonel Ovid Zero Wilson of the United States Army. He was a colonel at the onset of World War II, and he served in the Philippines. So that means that he had to face the Japanese right off the bat during World War II. Well, the American military in the Philippines was not, let's say, the most technologically advanced military out there. The United States wasn't really in the fighting business at the time, so they were essentially using World War One technology. The Japanese, on the other hand, that invaded the Philippines to kick out the Americans, were fielding a very modern military by the standards of the era. Well, the Americans were pushed back and back and back on the Philippines. Um, Douglas MacArthur was there. He left. He said, I shall return," or something to that effect. And the Americans on the island were left, and they kept fighting, but eventually they ran out of food. They ate everything like monkeys, snakes, grasshoppers, anything that they could, but even that was gone at that point, and they were forced to surrender to the Japanese. Well, the Japanese, if you know anything about World War II Imperial Japan, were not exactly in the prisoner taking business, not in 1941, not in 1945. So, what they did is they made the Americans and the Filipinos that were fighting with the Americans perform something called the Bataan Death March. The Bataan Death March was a march of prisoners of war, essentially to a staging area where they would from then go to various prisoner of war camps, be them in Japan or be them in Japanese occupied Manchuria. Some of you will know that as Manchukuo. Regardless, the Japanese marched the Americans and the Filipino, now prisoners of war, um, up the island of Borneo. Well, the Americans and Filipinos, as I mentioned, they were struggling to find food, and they were struggling to fight back, and now they're made to march a death march, and it was atrocious. It was horrible, um, and essentially get to the staging area. Well, my great grandfather, Colonel Ovid Zero Wilson, kept record of his experiences in and on the Bataan Death March, and then as he became a prisoner of war in World War II. Um, Out there is a version, like a printed online account of his after action report, um, and it's hard to read. It's brutal, really. I mean, it's prisoner of war account by a country that I would never want to be taken prisoner by. Well, um, essentially his story, and I'm going to condense heavily here, um, is that he marched a Bataan Death March, um, got onto a ship, and somewhere in the north of Borneo. Uh, these ships were called hell ships, because what would happen is the Japanese would just pack these ships full of POWs and then ship them either off to Japan or off to Manchuria or other little islands in the Pacific to perform physical, manual, and often fatal labor. Well, the first hell ship that my great grandfather was on was strafed by an American plane, either strafed or bombed, and it sank. My grandfather was correction. My great grandfather was able to survive that, thankfully, and from there he was transferred to another hell ship. To gloss over most of the details, but still give a little bit of a view into that, um, I remember reading his diary, and he said that he could watch the lice like in hordes move from person to person in the hell ship, and you could just like watch it move. Take you know a your normal living room or something like that and pack 100 people into there, and then you start to get an idea of what these hell ships were like, right? So very densely packed. You can just watch this like lice and whatnot like move. Everyone's either standing or throwing up. On other hell ships, there are reports of American POWs and Australian, and let's not forget Australians, New Zealanders, the Filipinos, POWs like not getting water, so people went mad and started, killing each other and drinking their blood for water. So hell ships is a very apt name. Um, but my great grandfather's hell ship eventually led him to Manchuria in northern China. From there, he became a coal miner. That's the nice way of saying it. He and the other prisoners of war that were with him were made to mine coal. I do distinctly remember that there were Australian POWs with his contingent of POWs. Um, Out in Manchuria, while he was mining coal, he actually set up an orchestra, like a play, to try and keep morale up among the POWs, because there's not a lot of hope to cling on to when you're a prisoner of war in a place like Manchuria mining coal. Literally back-breaking work. But through his diary, he kept repeating something, and it's something that's been on my mind a lot recently, especially today. And that is that this too shall pass. This too shall pass. The original story comes from Persia, and this king had "this too shall pass" inscribed on a ring, so that he knew in the darkest days, in the darkest nights, that the light would come and that good times would be there soon. And if he could only hold out through these dark moments in his life, then everything would get better. But he also had it inscribed in his ring for another reason. And that's during these great, great good days that one day things are going to get a little darker. And one day, even though right now, you're doing just fine, you're doing great, that you'll be sad and maybe you'll be angry, and you know, not every day is going to be full of sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes it's going to be rain and thunder, right? But he kept repeating that this too shall pass. My great grandfather, Colonel Ovid O. Wilson, kept repeating that this too shall pass. And in my family, that's something of a family mantra, something that my mom would tell me, whenever I was having a bad day, that this too shall pass. And sometimes even on my good days, that this too shall pass. Um, Recently, I've just graduated school, and I'm not good at saying goodbye. Uh, I had to say goodbye to a lot of friends at school, and that's never fun. I've enjoyed the time that I've had with them, but as graduation has gotten more and more near and graduated today, this too shall pass has been on my mind. And so I thought I'd share it with you on this Intellectual Tuesday that no matter where you are, this too shall pass. And I hope that you enjoy the little moments with the people around you, and that you just take it in and don't take it for granted. Like it's so easy to do sometimes. Sometimes, like I've been in school, and being in school, you have tests, you have homework, and you're like, oh my gosh, when's this going to end? I can't wait for it to end. But don't take those little moments for granted. Don't take those moments with friends as you're walking down the hallways, or um, if you're at work, don't take those little moments with your coworkers, or if you're just hanging out with friends. Those fun days out on town with the friends. Don't take those for granted, because they're not forever, and this too shall pass. Until next time, take care. Bye bye.